Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinskas.
Hey ladies, have you ever been curious about the role of the chief of staff in the corporate world? Well, you are in luck today because I have Emily Sander with me. She is a former chief of staff who is now an executive leadership coach and author. She is going to be able to shed some light on why this role is the unsung hero of the corporate world. We're going to be diving into why this role is like being an air traffic controller of the office. They are keeping all the plates spinning and the flights on schedule. If you are curious about the importance of the chief of staff role, please stay tuned because Emily is going to shed some light on all things chief of staff. Hey, Emily, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for being here on the No Woman Left Behind podcast show. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. This is actually the first time that I am having a conversation about what a chief of staff does and why it's important. And that's a great segue for us to start the conversation. Can you tell me from your perspective, having been a chief of staff, what is a chief of staff and why? The second part of the question is, why is a chief of staff an important role in an organization?
Certainly. Well, a chief of staff is an executive leader in the business world, and it's one of the most dynamic roles. So there's no one chief of staff. There's no one way to be a chief of staff. The analogy I like to use is an air traffic controller. So you know those big towers at the airports where you have a person talking to all the planes, all the pilots, all the ground crew, and making sure that everything is coordinated and on time and safe. That's what a chief of staff does for a business. And so they're typically the right-hand partner to a CEO, and they will be in coordination with him or her every day. And also they may take care of the executive leadership team. So your C-suite team and your VPs. And so if you ask yourself, in your business, could you use more time? Could you use more collaborative communication between your team members? Do sometimes you make decisions and then, no implementation or follow-up happened? If all of those questions are coming up for you, get my drift, then you can use a chief of staff. And certainly I've seen small businesses use them as well. So when they're scaling and when they have to build those internal processes or even expand their leaders' viewpoint of how they add value, because how you add value in a startup changes when you get to be, 50 people, 100 people, or growing even further. And so a chief of staff who's versed in a coach approach or change management can help facilitate those things.
I love your analogy of the air traffic controller because that really brings a good visual of all the planes kind of flying all over in the sky, and you're the one that's kind of directing traffic. And also, I like that you said that you can bring a different perspective to the leader that you're supporting because, correct me if I'm wrong, but you as a chief of staff probably have more of the ear of the people at the desks versus the CEO. Would that be something that you agree with?
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. A chief of staff is in charge of the information flow throughout the company. So if you think about it, if you're on the executive team and you've made all these decisions, you have a dozen meetings to make this decision, and then you lightning bolt that down to your organization. Well, if that message isn't conveyed accurately or as intended, you could have a whole bunch of issues there. And so that's one direction. Also, quote unquote, bottom up is important too. So if you have a customer service team who's taking inbounds from customers all day long, and that feedback or the themes of what they're hearing isn't getting up the organization, that's a problem too. And then the last direction would be horizontal or diagonal, which is if you have silos in your business. And I don't really know what they do over there, but I just keep my head down and do my one thing, then, no one's performing at their best. And so a chief of staff can help with all of that. And yes, to your first point, which was when you have a CEO, the chief of staff is often the only person to say no to them or challenge them, and also the only person to say, good job. You did a good job. In that last meeting, you did well. And almost no one says that to the CEO. So yes, you certainly have the ear and are the confidant of your principal or of your CEO.
That's wonderful. Now, when it comes to, so I'm more coming, to this conversation from the perspective of the women in the corporate world that are trying to advance in their corporate careers. Has anybody come to you and said, hey, Emily, how did you get to where you are? Give me a little bit of insight. And what are some of the characteristics or attributes that you need to be a chief of staff?
Ooh, that's a big question. To be a chief of staff, so you certainly need to be adaptable. You are moving from strategic world to the tactical world, and you're going back and forth all day long. So you have to move back and forth seamlessly. Unexpected things happen, right? We all know this. So in the market, in the company, reorgs, mergers, whatever, you have to be adaptable. And you also, while being adaptable, you still have to be focused. So, hey, if these are our top 3 priorities, let me adapt to what's happening, but we need to stay focused on those top 3 priorities. So having that mix or that dynamic combination of skill sets. I think a big one too is listening. And I've heard this like, oh, it's a soft skill. Like, okay, yeah, you listen, like that's patience or whatever. This is a critical skill. It will game change how you lead. And so one of the things the chief of staff has to do is listen really, really well to entry-level folks, to mid-level managers. What are they concerned about? What do they care about? To your C-suite team members. They might look invincible, but they have their insecurities as well. So listen for those things and how you can help and enable. A question I always ask is, how can I make someone's life better today? How can I serve my team today? And when you just have that lens, oh my gosh, I see a dozen things I could be doing right now. So I think all of those attributes are key. And the last thing I'd mention is you kind of have to be analytical and also intuitive. So you kind of have to be like Mr. Spock and Captain Kirk, and you have to be able to flex those different muscles.
And so when you were saying that you go for all the way from people that are at the desk all the way to that, the C-suite and kind of everything between, people are coming to you not only to say, hey, Emily, we need to get XYZ done, bring it to the CEO's attention, but also things are not working well in this particular department. How can we improve that? So is everybody kind of coming to you, and that's where you are doing the air traffic controlling?
Yes. So people are coming to you, and then you're also putting yourself in position for people to come to you. So walkabouts are big, right? So before COVID, it was, let me walk around the office and just kind of plant myself in places where people will be like, oh, hi, Emily. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Yeah, what's new for you? In the lunchroom, right? At the water cooler, just hang out there and people will find you and talk to you and tell you about their day. It's funny. People act differently around the CEO or around a leader, right? They get, the title, you're the president of the company. Okay. And so they will have very different conversations with me as a chief of staff versus the CEO. And I've seen VPs clam up, Emily, like, this is a problem. Like, we have to do something. It's so unfair. Okay, cool. Here's how we're going to tee up this conversation with the CEO. Like, I'm going to do it like this and hand it off to you, and you're going to present this case. And we get into the conversation with the CEO, and I go, okay, like, Anna has something important to share. Like, go ahead, Anna. No, everything's fine. I don't know. It's fine. I was like, oh, come on, face palm. So being able to say, hey, I want to be objective about this, but also here's some information that you probably need to know about that's not getting to you, and being able to be the messenger for that.
I like that. I think being the messenger is going to be so operative for you as the conduit to that senior leader, to that CEO. And I found it myself that when I was in management, I had a team of 10 to 12 people, and I would implement, some kind of process, and everybody would like, yeah, that's great. I love it. And then I hear through the grapevine, through the grumblings, that they don't like it. And it always puzzled me, like, why didn't they just say to me, I don't like it? Why didn't, I'm very approachable, let's talk about it. But it's that sense of, maybe it's the hierarchy, maybe it's the title, but I always was really good at when we were at an outing or somebody had a family member, they're like, oh, this is, Rosie, my boss. I'm like, I'm not the boss. I'm your coworker, because
I'm
I
just
had a
Rosie.
different
Yeah.
title, but we're in the same team. We're kind of in the trenches together. So I always tried to have that, open door policy. And even with that attitude, people still don't really tell you what they're really thinking, but they tell other people, and it finally gets to you.
No, for sure. I witnessed that. I went through that. It was right around when I became a director. And at that level, people are like, ooh, they kind of perk up and pay attention to you in a different way. And it was baffling. It was like, wait, no, I'm just me, but you're acting weird. And then it is about, oh yes, okay, my title precedes me. So when you have a title, that goes first, and you do sometimes need to make a conscious effort to put people at their ease or do things like you were doing, like, hey, it's just me. I would often share, hey, I need your help. Like, can you help me? I need your input. I need your feedback on this. And that would usually open the door. I would also, a good one is leading with, here's what I messed up on, last week. So everyone just heads up on that. Don't do that. And that's just like, oh, okay. So I'm a human too. And it opens the door.
Oh, I actually love that, because you're immediately diffusing the whole thing of, like, I'm the director. No, I'm a human being, and I have feelings and emotions, and I make mistakes too.
Yeah.
So that's huge. Now, you talked about the conversation that you kind of teed up for the CEO, and then the manager didn't say anything. So what are some of the strategies that you think are critical for women that are trying to have a conversation with their manager about their performance, or maybe they're wanting some feedback, or maybe the manager is doing something that they don't like? So what are
Mhm.
some strategies that you recommend to start having what we call a hard conversation or a difficult conversation?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is tie it to something that they really care about. So if you imagine someone coming up to you and you perceive it as like you're just complaining, well, how are you going to respond to that conversation? Whereas someone says like, Emily, like, I know you're big on um, relationships and learning and growing and making a positive environment for your team. Can I have some information that could help with that. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so you've already got my attention, and then you can go into the conversation that way. So what's important to them? Often with CEOs, it's revenue. So hey, I have an idea about how we can make some more revenue, or cut on expenses. Well, right away, like, you've got their attention, and then you can present what you're about to say in that light. So that's one. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
Well, it was just, how do people start that conversation with a manager when it comes to when they're trying to advance in their career, and they don't know how to say, hey, can we talk about my career development? How am I doing? Because a lot of times managers don't have the time, or unless it's like your semi-annual and annual reviews, you don't get feedback, but people are apprehensive to ask that question.
Yes, yes. Okay. So what I would say there is you need to be proactive and not just come with like an open-ended question and you have no idea. So it's like, how am I doing? What's my career look like? when do I get a raise? Those are like, those are not good leading questions. So it might be, okay, why don't I carve out some time to really think about what I want and what I think that my experience demonstrates, and say, hey, here's the direction I'm thinking of going. What do you think about that? Oh, like Emily, like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you would be amazing at that. Or, what? That's a really admirable path to go on, but I actually see you more over here. Like, I see you in people management. So, I'm happy to support you on this path, but we've been talking about you in this direction. Okay. Or it might be leading with a, hey, I want to get to be in the C-suite. And I know right now as director, that's a step that I'm going to have to progress to. So I'm thinking about how I can get myself there. And I think me taking on a project like this, or me maybe getting this certification outside of work, would be helpful. Are there any other things that you can suggest for me to get there? So you're changing the tone of the question to you're a presumptive close, and the person is just adding valuable feedback to you.
Good. And I think that those are great suggestions, because you are, kind of like when you're in trial and they're like leading the witness. Well, you kind of want to lead them a little bit so that you end up where you want to go, not where they want you to go. And like you said, they might say, hey, well, I was thinking you could be great at marketing, but maybe you were thinking, product management or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
But I think, like you said, coming into the conversation with a formulated plan for yourself first and taking the time to think about it is so smart and strategic, versus, going in there and say, can you give me some feedback on my performance?
How am I doing? Yeah.
How am I doing? And then the manager is like, every time people are put on the spot, they can't think of something.
Yeah. You're putting them on the spot, you're putting a lot of pressure on them. And so if you think about it like this, let's say you're about to write a book, and you have a blank page or a blank, Word document, and the cursor is like blinking at you. You're like, oh my gosh, I have to create this thing. That's like when someone asks you, like, how am I doing, out of the blue. Whereas if you have a draft or an outline or some ideas to work with, oh, okay, I can play off this, I can brainstorm that. I don't want to go that direction, but that makes me think of X, Y, and Z. That's a much better place to start from.
Absolutely. And just like a little tangent from there, I've been coaching people to use ChatGPT as a starting point of whatever it is that they're trying to do. It's always easier to start from a baseline, an idea, foundation, and then change it and tweak it and edit it to meet your needs, versus that blank piece of paper that you're just like, I don't know what to do, or I don't know where to start. So that's a little bit ChatGPT plug there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about when someone is trying to make a career change. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you think people generally make when they're looking to do that career change?
Yeah, I could come at that from a lot of angles. The thing that's coming to mind is don't act entitled. So when people used to come to me and say, Emily, like, you need to give me a raise. I'm like, whoa, okay, so hold on. Let's talk about, why you think that you deserve a raise. And I would get a lot of people doing the ultimatum, like, you know, I need a raise or I'm gonna walk. And I would often say, here's the door. So that's how not to do it. That's how not to do it. Act entitled. I would say be intelligent about the type of work you do, the type of projects you're involved with. Yes, there's a little bit of, is this project visible? Will this give me exposure? Or even I was in a position where if I took this one project on, I would be in this one meeting that had the VPs and the executives in it. I didn't actively participate in that particular instance, but I was listening, and I could pick up on what. So even things like that, be a little bit strategic about what you take on. And then if you do feel like, hey, I've demonstrated I can do this job, then make your case for it and make it as objective and demonstrable as you can. So pretty much, look, I'm already doing this job. Like, I'm already I'm already doing 80% of this job. If you give me the title, then I'm able to do the rest of the 20 by extension. And so you almost do, again, that kind of presumptive close. Don't be arrogant. Don't act entitled, but I'm doing this job. Here's what I've demonstrated. Boom, boom, boom. Have your information ready. And then, what would it take for me to move into a position like this?
I like that. And then I will add one thing that I always like to tell people, as when you are able to show somebody how you are helping them achieve their goals, that's kind of, to me, the cherry on top, where you're like, hey, I've done all this and I've done these accomplishments, but the bottom line is that I've helped move the needle on our collective goals for the company. And I think when, kind of like when you said the CEO pays attention, where you're like, hey, I can save you money. When you tell somebody, hey, I can help you meet your goals, they're like, oh, this person can help me meet my goals. That's great. And that's also a really good conversation to have at a job interview. When you're just interviewing and saying, hey, this is how I can help you meet your goals, people really pay attention when it comes to that. So I know that you have a couple of books that you've written, and you talk about the art of the swizzle. So tell me a little bit about the swizzle and how you use it as a resource.
Yes. So the swizzling is a framework for being creatively resourceful. So how it came about, I'll tell you how it came about. I was running around one day, I was very busy, and I was talking to my team, and we had to put a presentation together that afternoon. And I knew we had 3 previous PowerPoint decks that we had content that we could pull from each one. And so I said, guys, we have that presentation. Just swizzle the 3 decks together and let's do it. And by context, they knew what I meant. I was saying, take the best and most relevant slides from each of the 3 previous decks, reformat it, reorder it, and make it the new one. Another example that I love to share is I was listening to a podcast and they were interviewing Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd Mayweather is a champion boxer.
Mhm.
I don't know anything about boxing, but he was elite in his field. And so they had this person on and they were saying, Floyd, like, what makes you elite? Like, what makes you the champion? Is it your diet? Is it your footwork? Like, is it your training, the speed of your hands, all these things? And he finally said, no, it's my adaptability. I can adapt to any opponent, any round, and any punch better than anyone else. And that's what makes me a champion.
Wow.
And I was listening to that and I was like, boom, like light bulbs. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm not a boxer, but I can absolutely apply that to my world and business. Am I adapting to the market? Am I adapting to this person's communication style? Am I adapting to what this audience needs in this meeting versus the one I just had? So am I adaptable? And so I swizzled that concept from the sports world into the business world.
Oh my gosh, I love that analogy on the boxing, and the adaptability is such a key component. Pretty much these days, we are bombarded with so many different tasks and so many different objectives and your KPIs and all that stuff, that truly being adaptable is one of the best ways to get ahead. Because if you're not adaptable and you're scared of change, which the only thing that's constant is change in this world, then you can really get far behind very quickly if you're not adaptable and you're not willing to kind of go with the flow. So I really like that. Now, you probably have seen your share of failures, either for yourself or for CEOs or for staff. How can people figure out how to, quote unquote, never fail again?
Yes, so that touches on another framework that I have, which is called the failure loop. And so in my book, Hacking Executive Leadership, there's a graph, but I'll explain it for your listeners. It's a chain of individual loops that are connected and go up and to the right. So the overall chain goes up and to the right, and that's the direction of progress. So that's what you want to be doing. However, there's a point on each individual loop where you're going back down and to the left. And so that's what most people would consider a failure event. Oh my gosh, I went to that board meeting and I fell on my face. Or, oh, I decided to start that business and it's not going so well. So now I have to admit to myself and to other people that this is not going the way I intended. In that moment, if you stop and you say, oh, like I'm going to berate myself and rake myself across the coals, and how could I be so stupid? And you stop, then you stay in that part of the loop. But if you say, I know where I am in the process, and I'm going to take the learning and lesson and propel myself up to the next loop, you've just made progress. And so if you think about it, if you do this over and over and over again in your career or in your life, you will be a successful person by definition. So, one quote that I love to go along with this framework is, I'm successful because I fail more times than you even try. So I
Mm.
fail more times than you're willing to try, and that's why I'm successful. So that's a framework for thinking about failure in a new way.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I got a visual when my kids were little. We used to play chutes and ladders, and you kind of, go up the chutes, and then all of a sudden you're like way back down again, and you kind of have to fight your way back up. But I love that analogy of when you fall flat on your face or whatever, and you stop and you realize where you are, and then just kind of get up, dust yourself off, and then continue up the ladder, then there is no choice but to succeed.
Yes. And I will say, I say it like that. It's not easy, right? I
Oh gosh.
recognize, oh my gosh, it's a gut punch. You just got embarrassed. And so sometimes it's a matter of time. So know the process, but hey, if that was a big, big blow, take the time to kind of process through that and then know, okay, now it is time to move forward. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We're like, Emily, you make it sound so easy. Believe me, I've been there. Believe me, I know it's really tough. But the cool thing is, just by hearing this, so just by knowing about this framework, you are closer toward making progress easier.
Absolutely. I interviewed a confidence coach quite a while back, and she said that we need to take time to sit in the suck. So when you do have a failure, take your, whatever half day, full day, 24 hours to kind of just experience those emotions, because we all experience failure, whether they're small failures or large failures. Failing is part of life. But I think where people sometimes go wrong is when they fail, they're paralyzed and then they don't want to try again. And when you're successful, is that trying again, not necessarily that you've met your goals, but that you're adaptable to trying again and continue to move on the course. And again, anybody that actually has a goal that continues this framework, this process, is eventually going to meet that goal. So, but it's just a matter of continuing to move forward. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think something important that you said is, it's painful to look back at that event and say, how was I responsible? Like what did I contribute to that? That's a tough question, but that's where the gems are, right? That's where you get the pieces. Okay, now I faced up to that. I'm not going to linger there and ruminate over and over, but I've done the work, and now I can take that and apply that going forward. And that's what propels you up. So absolutely.
Got it. And so, shifting a little bit about just your own personal story, how did you get to be a chief of staff? And I know that you're um, creating a coaching program about chief of staffs, or a project to that sort. So, tell me a little bit about how you got to be a chief of staff, and what are some of like the key learnings that you've gained from that?
Ooh, that's another big question, but a good one. I would say how I got to be chief of staff. It's the classic combination of, I'm smart, I'm hardworking, and I had a few lucky breaks in my career, and so um, I had some great mentors early on who opened some doors for me that they didn't have to. Right at that stage of my career, I was a relative nobody, and they saw something in me that I didn't see myself, and so they opened a door, and I will be forever grateful for those people. The other thing I would say is, I am a planner and I'm organized, and I had like a very specific career path. None of that has happened. So being very open to, oh, I think it's like A or B, and really it's option blue triangle, sea monster or whatever. It's something in life, something in your career will pop up and that you can't even conceive of right now.
Mhm.
you can't even think of it, and some doors are going to open, or some opportunities are going to come together, that's perfect for you and that you never thought of. And so I would say be really open to that. That's something I've learned. Oh, I'm getting anxious or frustrated because I can't see this one thing happening. Well, okay, that might be true, but 100 other things could be coming about, and leave yourself open for that. So be smart, be hardworking. Also open some doors for some other people, because that's giving you some good karma and putting some stuff out in the universe. And then be open to, hey, even if I don't see an option now, that doesn't mean there isn't one for me.
I love that. And so when you say you got lucky breaks, obviously that's a combination of people advocating for you and then just having opportunities, almost kind of like being at the right place at the right time. However, just by you being a planner, being organized, being a hard worker, all of those are attributes that someone is going to use to continue to advance in their corporate career. So, I don't want to discount the fact that your hard work was a big contributor to that, but at the same time, having those advocates are stepping stones to, making things happen in your career.
Yes. Well, to your point, it's funny. The harder I worked, the luckier I got. So there is a correlation between those two for sure. But certainly, I give amazing credit to some mentors that have been instrumental in my life. So yes, it's a combination of those things for sure. But be prepared, be open to opportunities. And I think Oprah said it. If preparation and opportunities meet, that's when you walk through new doors.
Yeah, exactly. I was just coaching somebody last night and they're just starting their job search. And I was like, you know what? The biggest thing at the end, I was like, consistency and persistency. Like you have to have it's a long game. A job search is always a long game. It's not a once and done. You can sit down for an hour and it's done. You have to work at it and you have to be consistent and have that persistency. And eventually something will happen, something will shift. I also like the fact that you said you had this picture about your career and it wasn't at all what it ended up being. So I never imagined myself as an entrepreneur, a high performance coach, a speaker, or a podcaster. And here I am, a entrepreneur, high performance
All
coach,
three.
speaker, and podcaster. So you're absolutely right. And the other thing is kind of like you said with karma. I wholeheartedly believe that we need to help those coming up behind us because myself included, and you, we had mentors, we had those people that saw something in us and supported us and became our advocates. So when you're not in the room, they'll still say, hey, Emily's perfect for this role. Let's give her the opportunity. And I do feel that we as women need to continue to support those women that are coming up behind us and also have conversations with them as well of you can do this, go apply for this position, think about it, go have a conversation with your manager. All those things we collectively need to encourage those younger women that are coming into the workforce to just guide them and show them and just be aware that there are opportunities out there.
Yeah. And I think it was Oprah again who said, there are two types of female leaders. The type that get to the top and slam the door shut so no one else can come in, and the type that wedges their foot in the door and tries to pull as many people through as they can. So which one are you? Which one do you want to be?
Yeah, and to your point, the competitive edge, it's always good to be competitive because it kind of gives you a little bit of oomph, but not to the detriment of your peers.
Right.
Collaboration is always going to be much more effective and productive than individual productivity and not wanting to share either in the responsibility or the success once the team actually gets to their goals. Um, so one other question that I wanted to ask you. So as a chief of staff and as a director, you always had to make decisions. So how did you get to become a confident decision maker, whether it was a decision that you had to make on your own or for the CEO or some of the other executives that you had to make?
Hmm. There's many components. So the first one I would say is I learned to look back and say, Emily, did you make the best decision you could with all the information you had at the time? And so hindsight 2020 is great, right? Like, oh, I should have done that, or oh, that was clearly the answer right there. But did I make the best decision with all the information I had at the time? If the answer is yes, there's nothing more I could have done. If the answer is no, we're like, okay, even at that time, in my heart of hearts, I knew I was trying to force that thing. Then it's throw it in the failure loop and say, okay, what can I learn? What can I glean to apply next time? I would also say, I have gotten much better at separating a decision from an outcome. So a decision and an outcome are two very separate entities, yet a lot of people fuse them together. Oh, well, that didn't go the way I wanted, so clearly that was a bad decision. I made a bad decision there. That's not necessarily true. You could have made the best decision you could at the time, and it just happened to go another direction for a myriad of other external factors. And so when I am reflective and I try to be self aware and I say, okay, let me run through my responsibility and ownership in that. Did I do the best I could? And if the answer is yes, the answer is yes. And it's like, all right, that sucked. It didn't turn out good, but that's what it is. I would also say be intentional. So know what you want in a certain situation. There's another framework I'll just run through really quickly called 3 circles, and it's circle 1 plus circle 2 equals circle 3. Circle 1 is an external event that happens. So an email comes in or something happens at a meeting. And then you acknowledge that and you jump to circle 3 really quick and you say, what do I want to have happen here? So circle 3 is my desired outcome, which is an important step. Like knowing what you actually want to have happen keeps you from making emotional knee-jerk reactions. And then you're able to reverse engineer and step back and say, okay, if I want that outcome in circle 2, what do I need to do? What do I need to say? What do I need to not do and not say to give myself the highest probability to get to circle 3? And so something like that, you can make decisions on the fly where like you're leading a team meeting and everything's going great. And then, I don't know, Joe over here starts to rumble and grumble and starts to yell and get irate. Okay, that's a situation. That's circle 1. What do I want to have happen here? Maybe acknowledge something that Joe has said and get him calmed down and get the meeting back on track. That's circle 3. Okay, so what do I have to do in circle 2? Well, maybe say, Joe, I hear you're upset, and I actually really want to get to the budget allocation for departments as well. That's actually on the agenda for the back half of the meeting. Some of the folks here don't have the context for what you're talking about. I want to make sure they do. So let's go to the agenda here and let's get back on track. Something like that. So that can be how you can make decisions. That 3 circles framework also works proactively. So let's say you're going into a meeting and you're saying, okay, this is our quarterly planning meeting. Well, what do I want to have happen by the end? I want people to feel informed and comfortable and confident going to their teams and giving the merger update. And so, okay, in circle 2, I need to provide an update from our latest round of conversations, and then I need to listen. So I need to ask a question and then just hear how people are doing, and that's what I'm going to do in circle 2. So anyway, that was a long answer to your question, but those are some of the decision making tips I would say.
I I really appreciate the explanation of the 3 circles, and I can clearly see how you can apply that to job search. So if you're trying to become a director and you're right now a manager, what is it that you want to get to? You already have that circle 3. So what do you need to happen in circle 1 and circle 2 to
Yeah.
get to that circle 3? And that's where you start having conversations, you start analyzing your skills, you start figuring out if you need additional training or certifications or whatever to actually be able to qualify for that circle 3. So I love the reverse engineering concept, because if you don't know where you're going, you don't know what tools you need to get there. So I think
Right.
that's really brilliant. And so when was it a conscious decision for you to become a coach? Because I know you're a coach now. And so what kind of coaching do you do? And how did you actually get to writing your books?
Yes. So, yes, I'm an executive leadership coach, and today I work with kind of two main groups of people. The first is chiefs of staff and their principals, so chief of staff bucket. And then I also work with early executives in a career transition. So, if you just got to a VP role, if you just got to a new role and you're like, I did it, yes. Oh my gosh, what do I do? So, I work with people at that stage. And I knew I wanted, it's funny. I was a coach before I knew what coaching was. So
Mm,
I was doing coaching. That's just what I did and who I was. And so once I realized that and put those two things together, oh, I do these things anyway, and oh, that's a thing you can do as a profession. All right, eureka. I'll go that direction. But I do remember I was in between jobs and I was waiting for, I had my last day and I was waiting for the first day of the next one to start. And I was like, what's my favorite part about all these jobs I've had across these companies? And I made a list, and the recurring theme that was clear as day was the coaching aspect, the one-on-one relationships or collaborations where, oh, I helped Jennifer be more confident speaking up at team meetings. Or, hey, I coached Christian to say, you can take on this role. Like after I leave, I'm going to advocate that you take on this role and you need to step into it. So those types of things were just front and center. And so I became a coach. I got certified and got trained and everything, but I love it. I think when you can wake up each morning and say, I'm doing good work, I'm making a difference, and you still get that dopamine rush when you help someone else succeed, then it's a good spot to be in.
that's awesome. And then how did you get to writing your two books?
Yes. So the first book was during COVID, and I kind of had a book in the way, way back of my mind. And I was like, maybe one day. It was a one day thing. But writing books was for other people. Like I don't write books, like that's for fancy authors and stuff. And COVID happened and lockdown happened, and I was going a little bit crazy in lockdown. And so I was like, I need something to channel my energy into. And I was at home and you couldn't go outside, of course. And then I got this email and it said, have you ever wanted to write a book but don't know how? And I was like, holy cow. Like, I don't know what I sent out into the universe to get this, but that was the perfect timing and the perfect message. And I replied to it before I could think about it, by the way. I
Mm,
remember, Emily, reply to this. Don't think. Just reply, say yes, and then go for it. So I did, and that was actually from uh, someone who was a public speaker, and their industry got turned upside down with COVID, and so he was reaching out to people to help publish their books, and so that's how the first one came about. But it's a collection of frameworks like we've been going through here that I've just picked up over my experience and over my coaching practice that has helped people, and you can apply these things to many different scenarios. But I think if you have the building blocks and tools. So, not necessarily in this type of situation, here's what you say. It's more of the frameworks that you
right.
can universally apply. Those are gold. So, if you have a whole bunch of those in your tool belt, you can pull out when you need, then you're armed for success.
That's
And the second one, which is the chief of staff book, I wrote that earlier this year. So it came out, oh my gosh, May of 2023. And that was just a labor of love. And I was coaching a whole bunch of chiefs of staff, and a lot of the same questions and themes and different pieces were coming up. And I said, I need to get this in a book. And so I wrote a fairly quick book. It was I remember at Christmas, so in December, I decided to do it, and then I had the manuscript done by March, and so the editing and the book cover and the art and all that stuff took a little bit longer, but I was in go mode, and so I stayed laser focused and got that out, and it's been very well received by the chief of staff community and also just people wanting to learn about that role.
Right, right, right. Well, congratulations on your success on your 2 books on becoming an executive coach. I think that's really amazing when someone can use their skills and, like you said, your labor of love to put it out into the universe to help people, because that's ultimately what my goal is for our listeners, to be in a job where they feel fulfilled.
Mhm.
Because if you are sitting listening to this and you're in a job where you're not engaged and you're bored and just your days are long and you don't feel that fulfillment, you need to do something. You need to take action. You have to have a conversation with somebody so that you can kind of get out of that rut. And a lot of times, the whole quiet quitting, it's a term that I don't think people are using as much, but if you can re-engage that love of what you do, that's going to be your best case scenario to continue to advance. But if you just kind of leave it as is and you're like, I just need to clock in and clock out and get home, 8 hours a day of just getting by or dealing with, it's just such a chore, and you can take action to change that. So I love that you're fulfilled and that you're helping people to be fulfilled in their own career. So
And if I could just jump in with one thing. So when I talk to people about this, I get a couple different reactions, and some people are like, I can't quit my job because it would hurt my family, right? I'm the breadwinner, it would hurt my family. And there is a timing element, right? So I had clients during COVID where like this is probably not the right time to start that business. So stay in the job you have and put food on the table for your family, but then, keep working behind the scenes on putting the pieces together to start that business when things open back up. And so there is like the reality of the situation and being pragmatic. And then there's also the, well, if you're going to a job and you feel hollow inside and you're going through the motions and you're just punching in and punching out, how do you think that you're showing up for the people around you?
mhm.
Are you at your best? Are you engaged? Are you alive? Are you giving them what they need? Probably not. Probably not. So when people say, "Oh, I can't let people down," well, then don't. Then
Yep.
don't. So figure out where you want to go. And again, I waffle off, like, follow your dreams. I understand what that's saying, and I agree with the sentiment, but it's almost like, put your money where your mouth is, and create a deliberate plan about how you're going to do this. Say, what do I enjoy doing? What do I lose time doing? I'm in flow. What does my experience lend itself to? And then the where those circles meet is kind of like a Venn diagram. Like what does the world need, I guess, is the third one. So where would people actually have a demand for it? And so where those intersect, okay, here's some opportunities in that sweet spot. Let me be deliberate and maybe put a plan, three circles plan or something similar in place and go after that.
That's awesome. All right. Wonderful. Well, Emily, is there one tip that maybe you can leave? And of course, you've already given us a lot, but one tip that you can leave the listeners with that are maybe in that job search mode, whether they just want to continue to advance in their careers or maybe they feel stuck. One tip that you can provide.
Yeah, that's hard to pick from. I might give you two. The first one is, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you be doing right now? If you
Mm-hmm.
knew you couldn't fail, if you knew anything you did would be wildly successful, what would you be doing differently than you are right now? So that's just a question or a prompt. And then I would say, go out and get your small win. And so if you're in a job search, what are the small pieces that you can put together today or tomorrow that will help you get towards your goal? So it could be, hey, I'm going to review 10 job descriptions. I'm going to apply to three of those. I am going to make sure I take a walk and keep myself sane and get perspective. Like, what are the things that you get a small win for? And when you put your small wins together, small wins add up faster than you think.
That's awesome. I love it. All right, Emily. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I really enjoyed our conversation. It's very evident that you're really good at creating those frameworks that are very easy to understand, maybe not easy to implement, but baby steps. And like you just said, a little bit of action goes a long way in the end. So thank you so much for being with us today. And I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really respect and appreciate what you're doing. And so it's been an absolute pleasure to be on your show. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Well, I had some major takeaways from my conversation with Emily. Being adaptable and open to new opportunities is crucial for success. Emily emphasized the importance of being flexible and willing to adjust to different situations and different challenges. Adapting to change and being open to those new possibilities can really lead to growth and advancement in career. But again, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. Failure, the second thing that was a major takeaway, is that failure is not the end, but rather a stepping stone to success. Emily introduced the concept of a failure loop, where setbacks and failures are seen as learning opportunities. And I think that was crucial, a crucial learning there. Instead of dwelling on the failures, she said it's important to reflect on those failures, learn from them, and use them as knowledge to propel yourself forward. Emily gave us two great tips. The first one, she said, this is more of a prompt to get yourself to think. Ask yourself, if you knew that you couldn't fail, what would you be doing right now? So the prompt here is for you to think about your aspirations and your goals without the fear of failure holding you back. It also encourages you to dream big and consider what you truly want to achieve. And the second thing that she leaves us with is to focus on achieving small wins. Break down larger goals into smaller, manageable tasks that can be accomplished in a short term. And by doing this, you will be able to celebrate those small wins and build upon them. So this way you can gain momentum and make progress towards your larger goals. All of Emily's contact information is going to be on the episode website, so go to there to connect with her. And before you go rushing off to your next thing or to connect with Emily, I also want to talk about your next career power move. This is for you if you're ready to be promoted, but not sure where to start. I encourage you to take 3 minutes to complete the promotion readiness checklist. This checklist basically takes the guesswork out of the fact if you are ready to be promoted or not, or what's holding you back in your career. Once you're in the know, you will be unstoppable because you will have actionable things that you can work on. The link to the promotion readiness checklist is on the episode website. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.